detective thrill me.
Thanks for joining us again, Jared. We're on the revisit track again here, mate, because you came to me the other day with your head bowed and and mumbled something about Halloween 5.
Cap in hand.
Cap in hand. Now, if people don't remember, it was back in 2015. Is that not correct, Jared?
It was 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
One of our early episodes was a Halloween franchise smackdown where we sat up and we compared what we believed at the time were the two worst films in the franchise, and that was part Halloween 6 and Halloween 5. Now, Jared was on Halloween 5's side and was saying it was not the worst, and I was on Halloween 6's side.
Having re-listened, I think we already mentioned that Resurrection and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 were both in fair contention for it as well.
Yes.
But I think we picked those two because we had a little bit of a disagreement on what we felt was the worst one.
If I remember correctly, I mentioned Halloween 6. I had watched it when I got the Blu-ray box and said I felt it was better than 5. And that kicked off a bit of, you kind of went, what? And puffed your chest out.
Yeah, I think there was a few bullshits and, pull your head in.
What the fuck are you on? Stuff was going on. But, the upshot of those episodes, which I re-listened to today, was that we couldn't split it. We neither of us would concede after having a long discussion about it that one was worse than the other. So we both stood fast on our films. So imagine my surprise, Jared. 5 years later, you come to me and say, "Well, you might have got it wrong." Is that a fair call?
Yeah, look, something along those lines. I may have,
because quite frankly, I feel fucking vindicated.
I may have changed my tune slightly.
I mean, listening back, we had 0 likes for part 5.
Yeah, I know. I understood. Yeah, I got that too. We also had the issue of you felt that Halloween 5 had put Halloween 6 in a corner, whereas I said, no, you just ignore it if you don't want to use it. And I still believe that. Right. I still believe that Halloween 6's issue are not necessarily Halloween 5's fault. If they really didn't like it, they could have just not used it, which is what ended up happening in the very next movie. So there's still points that because I re-listened as well, there's still points that I brought up that I still think stand. But imagine my surprise when I fucking, the last time we watched Halloween 5 and I thought, oh shit, I think it might even be worse than I thought. And then imagine my surprise when I roll into Halloween 6 and watch the theatrical and producer's cut and think to myself, I think they're both better than Halloween 5.
So
I've had to completely change my tune.
Okay, so we're going to revisit the smackdown for a few minutes here, Jared. You went to great lengths to tell me why part 5 was better than part 6, right? What was it? I
wouldn't say great lengths.
Well, you were pretty fucking adamant.
I'd say digging for anything.
What was it in part 6 that made you think, well, I think it's better now? Like, is there specific sequences? Is there something about it that's you'd missed that time for the first time in 2015? You're looking at it again and thinking, well, I just feel it's kind of just a little better structured. What was the gist of watching? Because considering you watched two versions of it.
So I guess the start of it, not the start of it, but I guess the opening before it really hits the home stretch where both cuts kind of go a little bit pear-shaped. I just felt that perhaps watching it this time, there was a couple of moments with Michael that were far better than I'd given him credit for, number one, and a little bit of menace. The theatrical cut, I hadn't really noticed the fucking scintillating guitar-driven Halloween theme that was screeching in the background, and I give that a little bit of a credit. I don't know. I watched it and I thought, fuck, this is... Not only did I think it was better than Halloween 5, I thought it was fucking significantly better. So I'm not sure what I was actually talking about 5 years ago.
Well, funnily enough, you even mentioned in the initial SmackDown that you believed Halloween 5 was far superior. And then when you watched the two of them, it kind of closed the gap. So you've really turned.
So the first SmackDown, when I watched 5 again for that, I was like, oh yeah, shit, it's not very good at all. But at that point, I was still a bit dirty on part 6, turning Michael into a henchman, essentially, and I still am. I still think that's one of its biggest issues. But Paul Rudd, I mentioned Paul Rudd was good. I actually think he does a very, very good job. I kicked the character a little bit. I look a little bit more favourably on that now. Yeah, like I said, I think Michael was far better than I gave it credit for. The mask and everything looks fantastic. It's one of the best ones. I believe you actually referred to Michael in part 6 as a fat slob at one point. So,
He was.
So, look, I can't, don't be crowing too.
He was carrying
much
paunch. She was carrying gut, mate. Like,
yeah, but they put a couple of moments in there that were a little bit reminiscent of the original. Like a couple of moments where they're looking outside and he's standing there, or
there is a nice one too where the lightning flashes when Mrs. Blankenship's telling the story, and he's in the background. He's standing at the window.
Yes, and I actually liked the first kill of the nurse. Looking at that again, I was like, fuck, that one had a little more menace than I suspected. And the shot that I really love is when he kills the mother of the Strode family.
Yeah.
Where she looks up at him, and there's that shot of just him holding the hatchet and just still for a moment before he fucking swipes it down. So that sort of stuff it works out all right. There was actually more of the cult stuff that I actually thought was okay this time around.
Really?
Like, I didn't mind it so much when they were in the house. And, Dr. Wynn calls the boy over, and then you find out Mrs. Blankenship's involved and all that sort of stuff. Look, the druids and the runes and everything is still quite a problem. I still don't think that works, and it kind of destroys it at the end, especially in the producer's cut where essentially it's heavily put forward that Michael was the father of the child.
Yeah.
And things like that. But
I think the problem with 6, the biggest problem with 6 is not actually this, and I think I brought this up at the time when we did it the first time, is the slasher sort of stuff is done rather deftly or reasonably well under the circumstances.
Yeah, some of that's pretty good.
But the problem is the plot is just a fucking house of cards. These ridiculous things. They're trying to tie everything together, and it's part of the problem with it. And I hesitate to kick the shit out of Daniel Franz because I appreciate what he was trying to do, but it was too much. Like, he's trying to tie up every loose end and every little piece of the first 5 films. And it's a fucking fool's errand.
Yeah, it is. That's
just
right.
Too much to do in one film that had already kind of shit the bed with 5 and The Man in Black. So, I like you, skip it.
One of the reasons I wanted to go back and look at it is because both of us obviously went back and had a listen to the Halloweenies podcasts from a couple of years back where they ran through the Halloween series. And I really liked the podcast, but I heavily disagree with some of their feelings on some of the films. And so when they were watching Halloween 6 and a few of them were putting it up as one of their favourites in the series, I was thinking to myself, fuck, like, do they watch the same movie? So that was kind of a catalyst for actually going to rewatch it again. And I'm not as high on it as they are, but like I said, bugging me if I didn't watch it and fucking half an hour in, I wasn't thinking, shit, it's already better than Halloween 5, so what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And look, the druid stuff, it doesn't work. As you said, I agree. I think it was a bit of a fool's errand, and the Halloweenies guys seem to give it a heap of credit for trying to take that on. I'm not necessarily in that camp, but there were points of it that were far more interesting than I gave it credit for. Problem with the producer's cut I think it goes too deep into it. Like when you're under Smith's Grove and there's bloody people are chained to stones and there's guys that look like they're in fucking stone cutters outfits and things like that. I'm thinking, oh shit. But then the problem with the theatrical cut is it puts those people strutting around in like doctors' outfits and stuff, in nurses' scrubs and things, and it makes even less sense because it just forgets about it all. And you get into that fucking lab with
fucking heads in jars and
and then he gets jabbed with the ooze and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I mean that doesn't really work either. But they both have their points to like about them, and as a complete package, I think it's far more interesting than part 5.
You know what, Jared? For the most part...
I better not talk too loud because I may change my mind again.
Yeah, give us 5 more years and we'll be revisiting this again. But
yeah,
I think 6 could have worked out okay with the Thorn stuff if they just sort of ironed out some of the issues in the ending. Because it's fairly obvious that the theatrical cut ending was sort of whipped together after nobody was interested in the over-explained producer's cut, but then it's not properly stitched to it. It's just kind of jammed on there. So it doesn't have any connective tissue and it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't... So if you'd ironed some of that out, you could have probably got away with the previous hour.
When I was looking at it, I thought to myself, would this work better if, again, he wasn't a henchman? If this group had put the curse on him, but was essentially, and the interesting thing is, it seems to tie into that novelization now. Like it's got the similar themes that it had in that fucking Halloween 1 novelization, that strange chapter that started it all. And I thought to myself, would it not have worked better if they had have just given him the curse and kind of watched over it, but not been fucking directing things along?
Yeah.
I feel like there should have been a little bit more separation between the cult and Michael.
Yeah.
Like, not that he was fucking doing their bidding or whatever, that they'd cursed him to say, right, as Dr. Wynn explains, they would curse a child in the tribe to keep all the bad shit away from everyone else. So they curse Myers and they fucking let it run and go. And they're keeping an eye on what's happening, but they're not necessarily fucking directing traffic.
Yeah. They're
just around and keeping an eye on what's going on. He's got the curse and they're fucking, it's time to pass it on to someone else or whatever. I don't know. There's some ideas that I actually think are a little more interesting than I had given it credit for. I wasn't really interested in engaging with it the last time I watched it, seemingly.
Yeah.
Judging by my points of view on the previous discussion about it.
Yeah. And look, thinking back on 5, you can see why it kind of sucks. When I listened back to our initial discussion, all I could think of was, there's no characters, there's nothing interesting here. You killed off Rachel for no reason but to replace her with the most annoying character you've ever had.
Then kill that character off anyway.
Yeah, you got Michael with this ridiculous mask that is not even tucked in properly, wandering around in the background. You've got cops that come with fucking circus whistles and shit as their kind of, like, the whole thing. There's not one character you could possibly know.
Yeah.
And then you make Jamie a mute.
Yeah, that's right.
It's almost like you were trying to sabotage yourself.
Oh, God. Funnily enough, I also listened back to when we were ranking them, and I made the comment that I wasn't a big fan of the ending of Halloween 4.
What?
And again, I was sitting there going, what am I talking about? The ending to Halloween 4 is very good. I don't know. I went back to some of the points you mentioned, and some of them I agreed entirely with you when we were talking about it. But I just felt that what they had done to Michael kind of overrode my enjoyment of any of those other things.
Yeah.
And I described it to you as it's got more to like than Halloween 5 did, but the lows, like what it did to the character, just fucking sunk so low that I was just filthy for some reason.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it has more, Halloween 6 has more atmosphere. and a bit more gore, which is, totally, I agree 100%. I think I agreed at the time. And, we mentioned that Halloween 5 had no characters, which is completely true. You were trying to make a case at one point that Halloween 6 had far better characters, and you brought up the father of the Strode family, who we've christened for years now as Captain Arsehole. And I did have to laugh.
How did he go for you?
I asked you, what's his arc? And you said, well, he's a prick in the morning, and then when he gets home from work, having had a few drinks, he's a bigger prick. So, yeah, that wasn't the best argument for better characterisations.
Yeah, true.
You also said Dr. Wynn, and I said no. But like I said, I actually felt some of that stuff was better this time around. I still hated the kill for him, Danny, and all that sort of shit. And the van, I mean, fuck, the van still doesn't hold up where Danny looks across the street and hears the man in black standing next to the fucking van in broad daylight. As you said, I think, they were sitting in the back there going, oh, there's a couple of people coming past, just wait. Okay, jump out. Stand there. Okay, back in. Off we go. And took off in the van. Like, it seemed like a very well-coordinated plan. But yeah, 5, I think at the time I was feeling that 5 was more of a straight-down-the-line slasher. And even with the stupid man in black stuff, it did less to shit on the character. But looking at it now, I think 5 is so bad as a slasher and has such issues with the characters, even the characters that we love. Even Loomis and Jamie, you look at that film and it's their low points.
Yeah.
So even with that, I think that the fucking craziness that Halloween 6 does introduce and the fact that it sidelines Michael a little, I think it's still far more interesting.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Jared, because reading Taking Shape, the book, it just solidified that Dominic Athena Gerard was not the guy for this stuff.
No.
He's still rambling on about 5 being a quality piece of work. I'm like, have you...
Well, that's right.
Like,
you
have a look in the mirror,
summed
mate.
it up.
Like, self-reflect, mate.
You said 5 came from people who didn't give a shit, and I don't think he fucking walked in and started tossing scripts in the bin, and I think he had a lot to do with the fucking look of the house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think you're right. He cared very little for keeping any sort of continuity about what had gone on previously.
To me, he cared very little about the character of Michael Myers.
Yeah, but even with 6's troubles and the fact that it's still a bit of a mangled mess, I still feel like, you summed it up fairly simply that nobody on part 5 seemed to care, whereas part 6 at least people cared about the characters and had something about the series that they loved the series.
Yeah.
Certain people that were working on the film. So again, like I said, it's a bit of a mess, but I don't think it's anywhere near as low as part 5.
No.
So it's a fair old swing for 5 years. So come and talk to me in another 5 and I'll be talking to Halloween 6 is the best one in the series. Just
to sort of cover off on this, you're saying that Halloween 6 is the better film, correct?
Yeah, fucking oath.
Okay.
Comfortably.
I needed that. I didn't want to say I told you so, but yeah.
No, look, it's the mark of a man. I can admit when I was wrong, and for some reason I was fucking very, very wrong. I don't know. There was a couple of times when I was listening to myself and I thought, what? What the fuck are you talking about? So...
Yeah, you self-reflected. Dominique.
I did. I self-reflected.
Self-reflected.
Yeah, I self-reflected. I addressed things that need to be addressed.
I rewatched
and I move on.
So did you rewatch 5 as well?
No, not now, but I had rewatched it pretty recently.
Okay. So you have seen them both recently?
I've seen them both recently, and as I said, I watched the theatrical and producer's cut of part 6, so I'm well acquainted with that this week.
All right, well, look, now that we've got that out of the way, and the fact that when we first rated the franchise, there was no Halloween 2018, it had not been released at the time, and now with you sort of dropping that bombshell, let's reassess and rank the films from bottom to top again.
Right.
So, look, I'm going to start right at the bottom. We watched this down the coast a few months back. I think Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, is the worst by a sizable margin.
Agreed.
It is a horrid, disgusting prick of a film, basically.
Yeah.
And
I won't add anything more to that.
I just can't. I cannot see. Like, to me, that was the lowest point of the franchise, and it was just. I think I might have summed it up by saying it was like wallowing in a cesspool.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's certainly the worst as far as I'm concerned. So you've got it down there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I just don't like. I had no time for the wandering into bloody dream territory, and I felt the portrayal of a person dealing with trauma was just ham-fisted at best. And I don't like Rob Zombie's writing style, which I've said about 1,000 times previously. So yeah, it's the worst one.
Yeah. Number 10, the second lowest. I'm going to go with Halloween 5.
Well, we might need another SmackDown because you need to watch Halloween Resurrection again. Because it is.
Do I?
It is worse. It's worse than Halloween 5.
No, I'll tell you what my argument is. And so obviously Resurrection is right. So
I'm going Resurrection in that slot.
Have you got a Resurrection in 10? My thing, I've got Resurrection in 9.
Yeah, Resurrection on a good day, I might even tell you it's worse than H2, but today I'll keep it in number 10.
I'll tell you what. My problem with 5 is exactly what I said before. It was made by people who could not give two fucking shits about Halloween. And what they did to Loomis, Michael, Jamie, Rachel, characters that we got to know. And I think one of my big problems with 5 was, in the initial SmackDown, was you've just had one of the better Halloween films in Halloween 4, and you've had these two characters that we got to know. Then you turn one of them into a mute, and the other one you kill them within 20 minutes. I don't understand the thinking behind that.
Yeah.
And the thinking is, Dominic Athena-Gerard comes in with his fucking artsy-fartsy bullshit. I can guarantee you he would have been strutting around the set telling everyone, oh, no, I'm an artist, I could
Yeah, well, he still runs with that line.
It's crap, mate. You're making a smasher film.
Well, he mentions, Frankenstein and mentions all these other films, and this is what I'm making, and all, like, basically just talking about, that the Halloween franchise isn't good enough, so I've got to elevate it to another level, and in doing that, you made one of the worst ones. Yet you still can't see that.
Exactly. So that was the reason why I put 5 at number 10, Halloween 5.
Yeah. So my ranking at the moment is the same as the first time we ranked them. 2 and Resurrection are the two bottom ones for me.
Okay, so why
and
Resurrection?
That was 3 years ago. So obviously the retconning and bringing Jamie Lee back for 15 minutes to kill her off was a very, very bad start. I've said before, I'm in the camp of make as many of these movies as we can. I'm not precious about having to get around things to bring a character back. We've gotten well on the way to in most of these series is that you just have to accept that if you want another movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the worst example of it in a number of franchises that I can think of. Like, it's definitely in the big 3. So there's that.
They already had that in the pipe though when they did H2O.
Yeah, it was contractual. So yeah, basically, I think the start of it was actually shot during H2O.
Really?
The EMT, some of the EMT stuff was actually shot during the H2O shoot. So,
oh my god!
Look, it's disappointing because H2O was such a cracking ending, probably the best one in the series, aside from the first. So I think once you get into the bloody Dangertainment and the house and everything, it's just so fucking bland and so
Dangertainment.
The characters inside the house are probably the least memorable in the series, including Rob Zombie's. I at least remember, Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton from that one. I couldn't fucking tell you who was who in that Resurrection, and it's I end up refreshing on it. I have to go back and watch it, and then fucking 6 months later, I can't remember who was who because they're all so fucking
generic,
forgettable and generic. I don't think the Michael was very good. I don't think the kills were very good. And then I've cooled a little on Busta Rhymes. I believe I said he was the worst performance in the series. I don't know if it was the worst performance in the series. There's a couple of bad scenes, but I think at least he provides a bit of entertainment. I mean, he's fucking trying to provide a couple of laughs and things like that. But that sequence of being treated to a martial arts smackdown by Busta Rhymes on Michael Myers is not where I would imagine that I wanted the series to go.
Yes. The reason why I felt I put it just slightly higher is it was a slasher movie template. It was just a really generic one. Whereas 5 is God only knows what 5 is. But it's not a slasher movie. It's a fucking hodgepodge of crap whipped up in an effort to try and, I don't know, take Michael in a slightly different direction. I don't know what they were doing with 5, but Resurrection is a classic slasher movie structure, but it is just, like you were saying, it is poorly plotted. The characters are just forgettable. It is dated immediately with all that shit where she's dealing, he's watching it online and, the whole reality TV. It's just, the whole thing is just kind of like, it's really by the numbers. But the numbers aren't even that good.
No, that's right.
So I had it at 9.
Yeah, so I had 5
okay.
there. This is where my rankings start to shuffle, because previously I had number 6 there.
Right.
So I now have number 5 there, and really the only reason I have it above Resurrection is because it's a continuation of a storyline featuring, as you mentioned, we get Jamie, we get Rachel for a little while, and we get Loomis. And even though it's probably the low point of those characters, well, there was only 2 movies for 2 of them, and it was definitely the low point for those 2 characters, but that's the only reason that I could say I would probably rather watch 5 again than Resurrection if you gave me the choice.
Let me ask you this. How much money do you reckon Jamie Lee Curtis got given just to turn up in Resurrection?
For Resurrection?
Yeah.
Oh, no idea. I don't think it would have been significant.
I'm just wondering why you sign up to that.
For her?
Yeah.
This is unclear to me, but I feel like I read somewhere, and I don't think it was in Taking Shape, but I can't remember where I read it. But I thought they said that for some reason it was in the contract for H2O.
Yeah.
So she was sort of contractually obliged to come back and do it, and that was at the point where she said, I'm only coming back to kill it off. I'll have to go back and check that, but if it wasn't that, if it wasn't that she had to, then, yeah, I don't know why you would.
Because you know what? You take that one out, and Laurie's got a proper kind of arc across the entire franchise.
Yeah.
With the original Halloween 2 both in the same, then H2O, we were already starting to see some of those problems, and then 2018 she's turned into a fucking Rambo,
Yeah.
and is sort of off chops. But from what I recall, she wanted to kill Michael, and of course Mustafa Akkad was like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, and which I think he was, as you said, that was in the works from H2O.
I think she might have done a bit of horse trading to at least have the whole beheading at the end of H2O.
Yeah.
So I know I'm going to have to come back and get killed off because there's going to be another film, but everyone will think Michael's dead.
Correct. I believe it's something like that they had it in the contract, so they kept the ending as it was in their minds, saying that's Michael dead, but knowing they might have to come back and
within about a year or something.
That. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't take long.
All right, number 8, Halloween 6.
My number 8 is actually Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Once again,
so
we're probably we're switching spots.
rocketing up the rankings.
Yeah. Have you got 6 at the next one?
Yes.
Okay. So we're switched on there. The 8th position for me is Halloween 6. Look, I agree with everything you said. It's actually a little bit better directed than I give it a lot of credit for. A couple of performances are okay. There's a little bit more of the classic Halloween in it. But it is just absolutely ridiculous. The entire plot structure is just ludicrous. And as I said, I think it was a fool's errand to try and squeeze all that shit together.
Yeah, I think it was too much. Again, I came back to simply, after watching him again this time around, I just came back to, again, what would I prefer to watch if you gave me the choice of those two?
Yeah.
And I think adding Halloween 2 to the canon just made me dislike Rob Zombie's first one even more somehow. But I've just grown to really I've got a dislike for the Rob Zombie ones.
Yeah.
And I just, after watching part 6, I don't have that. I don't feel like I just rampantly kind of just dislike like I did with the backstory and the characters and the dialogue. And so again, I've softened on 6 very clearly. I'm not saying it doesn't have problems. It still does. But trying to split them, it was simply, what would I watch again? And for that reason, it would be 6 over Rob Zombies.
Yeah, I go the opposite direction because I'm probably a little softer on the Halloween remake because when we last watched it, I don't like the characters. I don't like the dialogue. The writing is just in a nutshell shit. But the second half, when he remakes Carpenter's, there is some stylish shit in there. And
yeah, I agree.
I think that portion makes for a reasonably entertaining Halloween film. It's just
which is funny because we seem to be in the minority there. So people seem to like that he tried something different with the backstory, but then dislike that he essentially just went and remade the first movie in the back half of it. But I'm totally the opposite. I thought his stuff that he added to the series was everything that was wrong with his.
Yeah.
And then when he went with the new one, his visual style, I felt like, okay, well, if you had just gone and added your touches to that, perhaps Michael being a little more brutal would have worked. But we still would have had this entity that we don't know why he's there, not this fucking child who's been mistreated by his fucking slob of a stepfather.
Yeah. Totally in agreement. And I think that portion that he redoes has got some atmosphere and got some style and it tones down a lot of his poor writing and characterizations where people just yell at each other. It tones all that down because it's kind of like fitting itself into the Carpenter mold. And for the most part, I kind of enjoy a bit of that.
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
I think a fair bit of that works. I just think the first half is just garbage.
Yeah, same.
And, people can argue all they want. Oh, he's doing something new. To me, it didn't need to be remade in the first place. So... Yeah,
and this is the thing.
We could have done without the whole thing.
Yeah, it's okay if you're doing something new, but that doesn't mean it's good.
But also,
there
was nothing new about that characterization.
That's right.
All he did
was, and this is the thing, his doing something new, to me, was completely misunderstanding what made the character great in the first place. And if you're going to go against that, the way he did it was the most cliched way to do it. I couldn't think of any more cliches that he could have stuffed in there. I don't give that credit for being, just because it's different. It was clumsy. It wasn't good. So just because it's different doesn't mean that that's automatically better than something that copies something else a little bit.
It's the same argument for Zombies Halloween 2. I found a couple of lists where it was up like at number 6. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're all saying, he takes his own path. I'm like, that does not excuse the awful characters and the terrible dialogue and the over-the-top brutal violence for no fucking reason, and a a morgue attendant talking about fucking a corpse. It doesn't excuse any of that. So
no,
the same thing applies to the front end of his Halloween remake. Is that it's just boring and it's stupid and it's cliche, and to sit there and say, well, that's the better part, I disagree. I think he's much more sure-footed when he's working with that template of Carpenter's, and he actually sort of gets some mileage out of Michael in the Shadows.
Yeah, that's what I felt too. I felt that Michael in his series was at its best in the back end of that first movie.
Yeah. So that's why I kind of had it at number 7.
Yeah.
All right, so number 6. What do you got?
Okay, so previously I dropped Halloween 4 behind Halloween 3.
Right.
I've flipped them around.
Okay.
So Halloween 3 is in this slot for me. I still really dig Halloween 3 a lot.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. But our recent rewatch of Halloween 4, for whatever reason, rekindled a few of the feelings that I had about Halloween 4 initially. So there was a point where Halloween 4 was probably my second favourite in the series. This was, I believe it was before H2O came out. And I'd started to acquire a few copies of VHS copies of the movies, and I remember I had a couple of Force Video copies of Halloween 1 and Halloween 4, and I used to love it. I used to rip through that thing. And I think the last time we rewatched it, I got a bit more of that back, and I got a bit more of I was more aware of the attempt to make it more like the first movie. So this is where exactly the argument with Rob Zombie comes in. People say Halloween 4 just tried to copy Halloween 1, and it did in a lot of elements, and it was purposeful that it did that. It was trying to bring back elements of that first movie, but it did it with a bit of style in a couple of moments, and it did it with a few scares. And so I would say that's my justification for switching them around now. So Halloween 3, I still love it, but yeah, I think it's I've just flipped them around for that reason.
Okay. I've actually got Halloween 2 from 1981 in this spot. I think, for me, the first hour I really, really like, because it feels like Halloween. It's a direct progression from the first film, and it's directed in very much a similar way. But it's the back half, the back 35 minutes, that the movie just sort of slips off the deep end. And to me, I think it's Carpenter's fault. Because he's the one who came back and shot all the gore and stuff. So
yeah, I think he did get word to do some of that though, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he allegedly said that Rosenthal's cut was as boring as batshit, basically.
Yeah.
And so they ramped it up, but it's actually the back end that makes the film kind of... It's not as enjoyable as it gets into that stuff. And
yeah,
Michael
so I
becomes
think you're right, actually.
Superman.
I think because I think there were other people that were in that camp as well, but I think you're right. Talking, looking at something like Taking Shape, I think he was the chief in that area of saying that it wasn't good enough and going back and doing it.
Well, I watched the TV cut, which is, I believe, more of of Rosenthal's cut, and yeah, look, it is pretty boring. It is. It makes a little more sense with a couple of characters, and it moves some things around, and the ending is slightly different, but it's pretty boring. I think they kind of moved some things out. I think they took out the girl, where he cuts the girl's throat in her house.
Mm.
That's not even in there. There's a few other things. I think maybe even the security guard dies in a different way. So there's some things that they move around, and it's just not. It's not as enjoyable. The first one, the second film is a handy piece, and I like it when it is doing the exact same thing as the first film, where he is hovering in the background. He's not he's in the shadows. You see him briefly in the background. That stuff works. When he suddenly starts melting people's faces off and, appearing every 5 seconds in the last half an hour, it just dilutes a lot of that. But I had that at 6. What did you have at number 5, Jared?
Okay, so number 5, I had... so this is where I had Halloween 4.
Okay.
After flipping around 3 and 4. So I talked a little bit more about 4 than I did about 3, but yeah, it's... Like I said, last time we watched it, just rekindled a few of those things that I initially liked about it, and I think it did a fairly good job of bringing Michael back after that one movie vacation.
I had number 3 here. It's kind of good fun. It's goofy. It revels in its own stupidity. And Dr. Dan Chalice, Tom Atkins.
You love him. Oh, you love a bit of Dan Chalice?
Drunken fucking womanising scumbag who it comes off as likeable.
Yep.
And to me, you can't beat that. Atkins, he delivers in that role.
Yeah. And obviously I've got a big appreciation for the Conal Cochrane's Dead Dwarf gags and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
The true classics.
But yeah, look, it's a fun little romp. It's as silly as a wheel. It makes no sense. I mean, fuck me dead. There's robots, witches, and Stonehenge involved. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we're sprinkling... I can't remember, wasn't it? We're sprinkling bits of Stonehenge in each fucking mask or something.
I know, it's ridiculous. And I think when we spoke about this film, as you pointed out, what's the end game? Are we killing every kid in the world? Because I can tell you, 30% of them might be trick-or-treating and wearing those masks. That's about it.
Yeah.
So really,
yep.
What are you actually getting out of this?
Yeah, that's right. Not to mention that all these people in your crew were children once.
Yeah.
So you're killing the next generation
of your crew. Although they're now robots.
Yeah, they're all robots, that's right. So don't worry about that.
I still don't understand it. But
yeah,
I appreciate its kind of ludicrousness and that it kind of embraces it.
There was a few exciting moments, a few tense moments in there to enjoy.
Yeah. So, number 4 for you?
So, number 4, I've got Halloween 2 here.
Okay.
I was close to flipping 2 and 4 as well, to be honest. I thought there's times when I've watched Halloween 2 and haven't really enjoyed it all that much. But I think in the end, it does a very good job of trying to recapture. I mean, it's the one that copies the most from part 1. It has its downsides in that it introduces the sister angle, which for some movies works really well. For others, kind of saddled it with its own problems. And it also is the one that introduced the gore and took it away from where it was in that first movie anyway. I also don't think it's anywhere near as exciting all the way through. I think it has more peaks and troughs than the first one. So I'm nowhere near as high on it as some people are. So yeah, I've snuck it in that position.
It's also peak Pleasance.
Yeah.
It's his best performance in the role, I think.
Yeah, he actually has a couple of really... There's some lines in there and some scenes that he delivers where it's equal to or better than the first one.
Yeah. So he is at the peak of his game in that one.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that.
Just like I was saying, that kind of dips in and out a bit more than it does in the first one. Yeah. I don't think he's consistent across the board. But yeah, he has some really cracking moments in there that don't sort of get mentioned as much.
Yeah. I had Halloween 4.
Mm-hmm.
I just think when we rewatched it, and this is the great thing about Blu-ray and the aspect ratios now of these DVDs and everything like that, is you can pick out some of the moments that you never even saw previously. Yes. The one that I keep coming back to is the one where Rachel's talking to the deputy in the rocking chair. And just in the background, for a fleeting glimpse, you see his mask kind of appear and then disappear.
Yeah.
And I'd never even seen that prior. Previous copies were not good enough, or the aspect ratio wasn't right, so you couldn't actually see it.
Yeah.
And just getting those little moments in there, showing that they were pushing for more of the original.
I remember watching it on my old Force Video VCR. It was like watching it through a waterfall or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you barely see anything.
You see it in a heap of movies now, where you suddenly notice something that's like, oh, I didn't even know that was in there. So, looking back on it, I think apart from seeing Michael with white hair and a pink face, the rest of it is pretty tightly done. You know, it's a tight package of about 85 minutes. It's not that long. And they kind of wring everything they can out of it. Oh, and apart from the death of Ted Hollister, which was fucking, unnecessary.
Love it. Classic stuff.
But, from my perspective, and I still think the ending still hits.
Yeah, the ending is very good.
Yeah, it's a ripper.
So the thing for me was that I think the reason I said I didn't like the ending initially was, and I still feel this a little bit, is I think in Halloween 4, I think you could already see that if it made money, that Jamie was going to be one to bring back.
Yeah.
And so the ending made it difficult to do that. Like I was arguing with Halloween 6, though. They just made that a little blip on the radar and Jamie was back to normal, just minus her ability to speak. So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's I think I can appreciate it now just as a one-off piece, whether they brought the character back or not, that it works for that particular movie, and it's a real nice way to, in their own way, to kind of bookend Halloween 1 to 4.
See, I would have really loved a Halloween 5 that perhaps had Jamie and Rachel as the key characters again. And again, you could have actually dug into trauma in that way. How a young child is affected by this.
Yeah. I think it was always going to be too that the ACADs and whoever else were involved, they weren't going to make Jamie the killer. No. Whatever the ending did, and whoever wrote that ending, they were never going to go through with making her the killer because they'd already taken Michael out once and didn't like the results.
Yeah. So I would have been happy to sweep that under the carpet and say that she'd lost her mind briefly and she'd hurt her mum but not killed her. And now she was, getting therapy, and those two were back as the key components of a new story where Michael returns. I think that could have been... In fact, fans would have dug that, I think, to see those two again.
Yeah.
But you hand the reins to some fuckwit who wants nothing to do with A, making good films, and B, caring one iota about the Halloween franchise. So,
yes.
But again, in a way, I kind of blame the cards because they couldn't rest.
Yeah.
They couldn't take any time.
Yeah, but look, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have this many films to revisit and talk about endlessly.
See, they're a double-edged sword, mate. I love the fact that they exist and are part of the franchise because they have actually shepherded it, and we continue to get films. I mean,
but just a little bit more. Maybe involved. Take a little bit more time between movies might have been a better approach for Mustafa.
I get the feeling that Malik's not quite the same. He's taken some more time.
Yeah, I think so. There's
been time, and there has been some effort to make changes and possibly try something different. I think the double-edged sword to Mustafa was a cash grab. That was their meal ticket.
Oh, of course.
Michael Myers was their moneymaker, so you had to have him on screen every couple of years.
Yeah, that's right.
No matter how shit the film was. So it's an interesting one in that respect. Number 3. What do you got?
All right, so this is where I put 2018.
2018?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think when we watched it and reviewed it, I said it's clearly the second best in the series.
Hmm.
I may be mistaken there, but I've got to stop saying things like and putting words like clearly and absolutely and these sort of things in front of it because I changed my
You
mind.
stepped on your
I just
dick once too often.
I just need to be a little more reserved. I think I did actually say that might change when we watch it. When we watch it again. I think watching it again, I still really like it. Obviously, I've put it third on my list. Here's one where I feel like doing something different did have its benefits. Like Judy Greer's character, for example. Doing something a little different like that with the family angle. It's hard not to compare it to some others. And I think some of the frustration seems to be that people don't like that it did away with all this other stuff, but then seemed to copy a lot of it from other movies.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like that watching it. And I know, again, referencing the Halloweenies just because I was listening to them very recently again, they seem to be fuming at it for seemingly just... They seem to be fuming at the filmmakers for seemingly disrespecting the other films in the series by saying we're not gonna keep that as canon. And then they said, oh, but you didn't do much better and you stole all this stuff. And if you're going with that approach, then you'd want to be better. You'd really better do a good job of this and not do worse than the films that you're disrespecting.
But they were better.
But this is the thing. I don't think they were disrespecting. I think they were just saying it's easier to tell our story. Like you said, it was a fool's errand for Daniel Farrens to try and explain everything that they'd put together into Halloween 6. So how can you do that for Halloween 218 when we've already had 2 remakes? So I don't think they were ever disrespecting the other movies. I think they had shown a great reverence for the other movies, and I think, in fact, they did that by saying it's easier to tell our story from part 2, but all these little nods that you can see to other movies or characters that you feel like are from other movies, I think they're intentional.
Yeah.
And I think in the end, yeah, there was some mixed things in there. There was a couple of storylines that were... I mean, let's not talk about Dr. Sartain, but there was storylines like with the podcasters that had some really silly elements that possibly went nowhere to some extent. But I really enjoyed seeing Laurie again. I really enjoyed them saying, okay, well, our story is that she's not related. So we're going to take that from a different way. And I feel like the performances were really good. The kills were pretty great. Yeah. A couple of them. And overall, I was just buzzing when I was watching it in the cinemas, and watching it again at home with a bit of distance. I still really enjoyed it, and I just don't have this. I don't have this ill feeling towards it for disrespecting the franchise. I don't feel like it ever did that. No. I think it just said there's no way we can try to make a story that follows everything else that's already happened and a remake and whatever. So we're going to make our story. We're going to, for ease of telling the story, we're going to go from part 1, but we're going to nod to all these other films because we love the series.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day...
And I think Halloween Kills is where they're going to... It's a bit like Zombie. I said H2 was really where Zombie made Rob Zombie's Halloween, for better or worse. Much worse. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like Halloween Kills is where we're really going to see these guys unleashed. I think they've done their little homage to the rest of the series, and I think they did it fairly well. And I reckon Halloween Kills is where they're really going to unleash, and that's going to be where we remember them as being a really good addition to the franchise, or possibly not so good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that they took a route. I had 2018 at number 2. I think they took a route to reintroduce Michael Myers. See, the problem was the zombie stuff, it could not connect to any of that because it was a remake, right?
Correct.
So you had to reintroduce Michael Myers. Okay? It had been almost 8 years, had it not? 2010 was H2.
Mm-hmm.
So it had been 8 years. So You're reintroducing Michael Myers. You're reintroducing Laurie Strode. You're telling a story of those two. Yes, you're cherry picking. No doubt they're cherry picking from other films. But in my mind, they did it well. And all I care about with a slasher film is I don't care if it's a generic story that we've seen before. If it's directed and acted well and it's shot well, then I'm with it.
Yeah. And I felt Michael was quite good as well. But James
also,
Jude
it had
Courtney
enough
did a
of
really
a
good job.
difference, Jared. The whole trauma angle, the whole Me Too type of edition, Laurie's hermit-like existence and turned into like she became sort of Loomis. The crazed,
and the podcasters trying to sympathise with Michael and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty surface level stuff, but it was
enough.
A different way to approach things.
And I'm with you. I think Halloween Kills is where we're going to see, good or bad, what they intended. This is just... 2018 was a nice way to get us back into Halloween.
Yeah, and I mean, all you got to do to look at the reverence they have for the series is the fact that I believe they wanted Paul Rudd back for Tommy Doyle in Halloween Kills. But it was scheduling that didn't work out. Scheduling, I'm sure that's what it was, Paul. But anyway,
yeah. He's sitting there going, "Yeah, it's scheduling. I'm not available."
Yeah. Paul took the call and said,
"Is it?"
He took the call and said, "Is it Marvel money?" They said,
"What's the money here?"
No.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's Blumhouse
No, I
money.
think he would have done it too. Because he's never come out and shat on the series. He's never sort of gone out of his way to praise it or anything like that. But he's never shat on it, and I believe he's quite thankful for the fact that it was his fucking first gig. But I mean, if they were really trying to disrespect the series, would they go back to disrespecting the series? Is what Dominique Athena Gerard did. Just looked at it and said, "No, this isn't what I do. I do this."
Yeah.
I think these guys were completely the opposite. I feel like they said all the right things. I don't think they ever went out of their way to disrespect anybody's movie, but I just don't think it was feasible to try and follow up everything else.
No.
And try to reconnect the canon.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, within those movies, they were fucking already branching off to different fucking continuities. So I don't blame them for just saying, look, it's fucking muddled. So we really want to do a Halloween movie, but this is how we would do it.
Well, the way I see it,
I just felt like they did respect what came before them.
But it was their pitch was to say that Michael was arrested in 78. So we're going in a different direction. We don't dislike these other films. We're trying to establish another timeline, and that timeline starts after the 78 original.
I think their intention was the easiest way to try and recapture what was in the original is just to go straight after that.
Yes.
And you use the word ignoring what came after, yes, but I don't think that means just flat out disrespecting it and saying they were all pieces of shit. I don't think they ever did that, and I think the nods that you see in this movie and the things that they use, like I said, I think they were intentional. I don't think they went out of their way to just like the way that it's been framed, that they just disrespected everything that before it and then copied it and didn't do as good a job. I just don't think that's true. I think they did quite a good job with it. I really enjoyed it, and I felt like they were the type of people that we wanted making these movies, that did have a reverence for other entries in the series, whether they could follow on from them or not.
Totally agree, and I'm with you in saying that they also didn't get it all right, and I'm not in any way, shape or form saying that they hit it out of the ballpark, because they didn't. The Dr. Sartain stuff was fucking ridiculous. Like,
yeah, of course.
I would have rethought that on the page. I would have just been going, look, this is not a good idea.
Oh, there's a lot of things that...
Come up with another way to get Michael out to Laurie's place.
Yeah,
it's not
that's
hard.
Right.
You know, like, that whole thing about him was just ludicrous and almost derailed the picture. Like, I'm being honest. I remember when it happened in the cinema, I was watching it, I thought, oh, fuck, what have we done here?
Yeah, same. That was the moment where I was like, oh, no.
And then,
if this is where we're going for the rest of the movie.
Jettisoned it.
Well, that's right. When they killed him, I thought, Phew, shit. We're back on track. We'll just forget about that and see where we go at the end.
Yeah.
Quite funny to think about that. They really could have fucking butchered it if they had taken that through to the final of the movie. If they had carried Dr. Sartain right through to the end.
Oh, God. That could have been real disaster. But yeah, look, I'm assuming you had H2O at number 2.
Yeah, I did. That hasn't changed for me. I just think it's always hard to get away from your attachments at certain points in your life to the movies, like you've mentioned with Halloween 4. H2O is probably my Halloween 4. Like, it was the one that came out when I was in sort of, the final couple of years of high school, when my sort of horror fandom was ramping up. I think I've said before, I had a friggin' binder of my schoolwork that had Michael Myers on the front amongst, I Know What You Did Last Summer and Ghostface and all this sort of shit. And I just really love it. I think it is, even trying to take out those feelings for it, I think it does one of the better jobs in the series of putting these slasher elements together. I think it's got some of the more likeable characters. We've mentioned before, the cast is probably one of the strongest start to finish of all of them. And to be quite honest, I think putting this side by side with 2018, with The Survivor and Jamie Lee Curtis's, Laurie's ways of dealing with what happened, I think I still come out just slightly ahead on H2O about the way she comes out in that movie. Obviously, it was heavily influenced by Scream, and you've got Kevin Williamson in there, with a bit of a hand in it. Obviously, things changed from his first draft, but he was involved in some polishes and producing and whatnot. So, to me, that wasn't such a bad thing, because that was at the peak of my fandom for those movies, and so I was loving what that was. But I think going back to it, I think it still holds up pretty well. I think the ending, like I said, is taking the first one out of the equation. The ending is the best in the series. I just think there's a hell of a lot to like about it. And I still really enjoy it whenever I go back to it.
Yeah, I had it at number 3, but I would agree. I actually think they balanced the Scream type elements with a reverence to the Halloween canon and the Halloween mythology, and do a pretty good job of almost making a little bit of a Frankenstein's monster out of the two types. The self-referential 90s slasher and the quieter, spooky 70s and 80s Michael Myers. So I think they do a really good job of kind of juggling that. I personally prefer Laurie in 2018. I think I like that. I like that kind of just destroyed character who's now fucking crazed gun nut. I think that sums up Laurie Strode for me after going through so much shit in the first 2 movies. I think, that's where I'd be. I'd be a fucking gun nut holed up in my own house too if I'd been attacked by a serial killer. But I like what they do with H2O in a sense of she's an alcoholic, essentially.
Yeah, and there's different, I really like the angle of her overprotectiveness of her child.
Yeah.
Because of what she's been through. Like I said, I actually really appreciate the 2 different ways they went about it with 2018, because it addressed similar things. The relationship with her family. I almost feel like in some ways you can look at them almost together, like that's where Laurie was 20 years after, and then this is where she is 40 years after. Like, they kind of still sort of go together in some ways, even though they're completely different continuities. I also kind of, I feel like after reading about it in Taking Shape, the angle where they were going to have Jamie involved still, that it was going to connect to 5 and 6 and she was going to find out that Jamie was dead, that could have been really interesting. That was a catalyst. She was already having issues with alcohol or whatever, but then she finds out about that. I believe they had it in like a format where someone did a bloody
school
presentation on the Haddonfield murders or something like that, and she found out then. That would have been really interesting. I wouldn't mind reading that script. But yeah,
that's the Kevin Williamson.
Like
script.
I said, it's Yeah,
think.
it's pretty close. I feel like it's pretty close to 2018 H2O. There's things I like and dislike about both of them. Mainly H2O. I dislike the mask situation because I mean that there's one mask in there that is a fairly reasonable facsimile and is a pretty decent mask. And then there's the other one that is just a fucking travesty. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah.
It's really odd-shaped eyes, and it's kind of got this wraparound sort of look to it.
And then there's the CGI.
So yeah, there's the CGI. Fuck, that was a bad idea. It's there's things I like and dislike about both of them, but I think those nostalgic feelings probably nudge H2O just ahead of it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I went the other way. I just felt 2018 worked better for me. H2O is good. It's another one that's a tight 80-odd minutes. It's pretty lean. It doesn't have a lot of fat. And I do like the characters. I think they do a really good job. And a lot of people sort of can take him or leave him, but I actually think LL Cool J is really good. And thinking about what was then put in with poor old Busta Rhymes in the next film, I'm like, LL Cool J is far better in this role. He's actually acting and doing a decent job of it, as opposed to trying to be like Buster was turned into like a hero type of thing. Yeah. And that didn't work.
Adam Arkin he's also one of the best supporting characters in the series, I think.
Yeah, so they do some really good things there. Unfortunately, Michael's one of the lesser Michaels for me. He's kind of tall and lanky. He doesn't really have much menace.
Well, he's got some good moments that I think possibly would have been even better with a better Michael, perhaps.
Yeah. But overall, I think H2O is a real good watch.
Yeah.
And of course, number one, 78. I mean,
no question.
I don't think it really says it doesn't need to be said. I don't think anything in the series, in the franchise, will possibly ever come close to it.
No, I think we've said it probably numerous times over numerous podcasts.
Yeah. I mean, they always talk it up. They talked up 2018 as saying, it's as close as you can get to the first one, and it wasn't really. They're talking up Halloween Kills in the same way. Look, the first one is a one of a kind.
Yeah.
And I think people...
You're never going to catch that again.
Yeah. It was lightning in a bottle for, a couple of young filmmakers, over a couple of weeks with a couple of $100,000, and make this movie that's just, still today one of the best sort of suspense slasher movies there is, or if not the best. Hard to top. And the franchise can continue on forever, and I don't think they will ever top it.
Yep.
All right.
Going to be difficult.
So let's just quickly run back through. I had Halloween 78 at number 1, Halloween 2018 at number 2, H2O at 3, Halloween 4 at number 4, Halloween 3 at number 5, Halloween 2 from 1981, number 6, Halloween 2007, Christ, at number 7, Halloween 6 at 8, Halloween Resurrection at 9, Halloween 5 at 10, and Halloween 2 from 2010 at number 11.
Yeah, so I had obviously number 1 was Halloween, number 2 was Halloween H2O, number 3 was where I had 2018.
Yeah.
Number 4, I had the original Halloween 2. Number 5, I had Halloween 4. Number 6, I had Halloween 3. Number 7, I think I'm getting this right. This is where number 6 rocketed all the way up to The Curse of Michael Myers was at number 7. Number 8 was Rob Zombies.
Yeah.
Number 9 was Halloween 5. Number 10 was Halloween Resurrection. And number 11 was Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Yes. Well, look, that's another quick look back and a revisit on the Halloween franchise. Obviously, I'm pretty fucking chuffed that you've turned around to my thinking on Halloween 6.
Listen, we can go back and mine some more material. I mean, we can go back and see if you want to defend your comments that Steven Seagal could deliver a performance and things like that, an acting performance. So
well, we know I failed.
You can have this. I'll give you this win. I'll give you this win.
All right. Well, look, that's the franchise and a revisit of the SmackDown. Keep an eye on our Facebook page for what we're doing in the next few episodes. But until then, take it easy, and we'll catch up with everyone later. Cheers.
Find the podcast at Podomatic or on iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review. Like us on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, or contact us at thrillme, all one word, all lowercase, at iinet.net.au.